Okay, let's dive right in. What we're unpacking today in this explainer is an absolute masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. We're talking about a massively out-leveled coalition holed up under a failing Golden Dome trying to defend the city of Camelot against not one, not two, but three overwhelming mega-guilds. It's a textbook example of how raw numbers and brute force can be entirely dismantled if you've got tactical synergy, environmental awareness, and a really deep understanding of the underlying mechanics. So whether you're a tactician, a gamer, or just someone who appreciates a brilliantly executed underdog defense, there is a ton to unpack from how this massive siege unfolds.
To keep things structured, here's our tactical battle plan. We'll look at the initial setup, the terrifying sky assault, the absolute meat grinder at the Hot Gates, a covert underground strike, and finally, the ultimate climax.
All right, starting with Section 1, the setup. The Aegis falls.
Look at these numbers. I mean, the stakes literally could not be higher. The 30-day timer on Camelot's magical Aegis of the New Dawn barrier is ticking down to its final hours. Once that drops, the city is completely exposed. And the sheer force disparity here is just staggering. You have the Empyrean Coalition massively, and I mean massively outnumbered by factions waiting to extort, subjugate, or just straight up annex them. On one side, the Aethelgard Consortium is fielding 5,000 heavy mercenaries and 1,000 Griffon-Riders. Then the Templar Brotherhood brings 2,000 magic-suppressing zealots to the party. And the defenders? Well, they've got a few hundred core Knights of the Round Table, 300 Spartan hoplites, and a fleet of Macedonian skyships. On paper, it's a slaughter. But as we're going to see, the defenders aren't relying on math here, they're relying on layered synergy.
Now, if you look at this timeline, you'll see it naturally mimics the escalating tension of a multi-stage raid. The attackers don't just, throw everything at the wall all at once. They test the perimeter, they try to bypass the defenses entirely, they grind down the front door, and when all else fails, they unleash their ultimate trump card. This minute-by-minute escalation means the defenders are forced to constantly, rapidly pivot their strategy.
Moving right along to Phase 2, the Sky Assault.
The second that barrier falls at minute 0, Aethelgard doesn't march on the gates like you'd expect. Instead, they hit him from the sky. They strip 1,000 Griffon-Riders of all their heavy barding to max out their dive velocity. These Griffins are literally flying bombs on a one-way trip straight into the Grand Foundry. By removing that armor, the riders are trading survivability for pure terminal velocity. They just fold their wings and drop out of the stratosphere like a localized meteor shower. And the terrifying part? If even a handful of these volatile alchemical blast packs hit the city's spires, the whole siege is basically over before the ground troops even draw their swords.
But the Coalition is ready for it. They've rigged up a multi-layered anti-air net, making sure there's no single point of failure. First up, automated kinetic steambows fill the sky with thousands of iron flechettes. It's a physical flak wall that just shreds the leading wave of dive bombers way up in the atmosphere. But, of course, in a swarm that big, some are going to slip through. And that is where the second layer kicks in. And honestly, it's an absolute masterstroke of elemental warfare.
126. That's the exact number of allied dragons and drakes that unhinge their jaws at the exact same moment to unleash this interlocking torrent of napalm and hyper-frozen steam. The crucial point here is how these effects combine. The Vanguard Drakes spew liquid sun napalm, cooking off hundreds of those blast packs midair. Then, mere milliseconds later, Silverwing Dragoons blast them with absolute zero cryo-steam. This creates an immense thermal shock that instantly freezes the volatile chemicals inside the remaining kamikazes. They literally turn into inert blocks of ice and just shatter harmlessly on the cobblestones. For the stragglers, the Macedonian skyships swoop in, dropping heavy Gordian bolus nets to tangle up their wings. Boom! The sky is completely locked down without a single casualty on the defending side.
Let's move to Phase 3, the Meat Grinder.
So with the sky clear, the chaos immediately drops down to the muddy earth below. Spartan King Leonidas and Percy O'Shea plant their boots right in the mud at the Hot Gates. It's this narrow valley pass leading straight to the city, and they are preparing to take the horrific kinetic impact of 5,000 advancing mercenaries. This is Choke Point Warfare 101. By forcing a massive army into a tiny bottleneck, Aethelgard's huge numerical advantage is completely zeroed out. Leonidas's troops deploy these Archotech bronze shields that vent scalding steam to absorb ridiculous amounts of kinetic energy. They basically turn the front line into an immovable wall.
But there's a massive catch, actually a game-breaking catch. A straight-up battle of attrition at the Hot Gates is completely unwinnable for Camelot. The enemy commander, Duke Rovan, has dropped a forward siege lodestone in his backline camp.
What does that mean? It means his mercenaries aren't afraid of dying, because every time they fall, they respawn exactly 3 minutes later, fully geared and just charge right back in. You simply cannot outlast an infinite army. The defenders quickly realize that holding the line isn't enough. They have to destroy the enemy's infrastructure.
Which brings us to Phase 4, the Covert Strike, the subterranean lodestone heist.
To break that infinite respawn loop, Lancelot takes a 10-man Black Ops strike team underground. They use secret subterranean escape tunnels to bypass the meat grinder completely, popping up a mile behind enemy lines right inside the enemy encampment. But capturing a siege-tier asset like the Lodestone is intensely mechanical. They breach the command tent using a domain of silence to muffle the alarms. But the instant Lancelot imprints his hand on the crystal to capture it, a massive server-wide alarm blares and the crystal glows red. For 10 agonizing minutes, this tiny 10-man squad has to survive inside a 5-meter radius as hundreds of Aethelgard reserve troops rush the tent. It is brutal, nail-biting, close-quarters combat, relying on Spartan spear walls, illusion magic, and void shockwaves just to survive.
And they actually pull it off. As the timer hits 0, Lancelot unleashes a massive void rupture shockwave, totally routing Aethelgard and claiming their entire vault and territories. Capturing the Lodestone doesn't just break the respawn point. Under the world's conquest rules, it triggers a total defeat for the attacking guild. The entire Aethelgard army dissolves. Against all odds, the defenders just dismantled a 5,000-man army.
Finally, Phase 5, the Inquisition's silence, the ultimate climax. Because, just as relief starts to wash over the defenders, a terrifying new army of 2,000 Templar zealots marches perfectly in step down the southern ridge. The Inquisition has arrived, and they've just been waiting for Aethelgard to soften Camelot up. The sensory shift here is wild. The explosive noise of the battle is violently sucked away, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence that completely disables the Spartans' Arcanotech shields. The ambient hum of the ley lines, gone, snuffed out by a blinding white light from a black iron totem. Suddenly, the defenders' glowing weapons power down. Their healing magic vanishes. In an instant, they go from superpowered combatants to just exhausted fighters holding very heavy pieces of mundane metal.
High Inquisitor Thorn completely capitalizes on this. His 2,000 Templars don't need magic. They rely on perfectly synchronized, heavy physical armor and brutal kinetic force to crush the unbuffed Empyrean frontline. When they crash into that Spartan shield wall, the impact is devastating. Without magical deflection to cushion the blow, the defenders are taking every single point of raw damage straight to the bone.
So here's the ultimate tactical puzzle. How do you defeat an overwhelming army that completely turns off all magic? If you can't cast spells and your magical gear is essentially bricked by a massive iron totem, how do you break the suppression field? Well, the answer lies in finding a loophole. They have to think outside of traditional casting and understand the critical difference between magical energy and biological engineering.
Hector realizes that while magic is silenced, physics sure isn't. Because his heavy steam bow operates on raw mechanical steam pressure instead of mana, he can still fire it. So he shoots these specialized emerald seeds in a parabolic arc right into the dirt at the base of the heavy iron totem projecting the anti-magic field. It's a completely physical action that bypasses the magical suppression field entirely.
Because here's the trick. These seeds aren't magical spells. They're a biological payload. It's living wood, alchemically engineered to aggressively seek out and consume heavy metal. The roots erupt from the mud with the raw, unstoppable force of a hydraulic press. They coil straight around that black iron totem and literally crush it into scrap metal.
And you can just feel the release of tension here. The exact second that iron totem shatters, the ley lines violently snap back on. The Spartans' shields repressurize, humming back to life. Healing magic floods the front line. Arthur's mythic sword Excalibur, which was immune to the suppression anyway, now completely synergizes with his fully buffed vanguard to carve right through the disorganized Templars. And up above, the skyships open their bombardier bays to finish the job. It is a flawless, total tactical reversal, securing absolute victory for the Avalon Empire.
So, this monumental defense proved once and for all that tactical synergy beats raw numbers every single time. What you should really take away from this explainer is that in any complex scenario, layered defenses, finding mechanical loopholes, and attacking your opponent's single point of failure, that's how you win the impossible battles. The Empyrean Coalition survived today by executing a flawless cooperative strategy. But with a newly forged empire and an entire continent of unexplored territory out there, it really leaves you wondering, if this was just the welcome party, What on earth is waiting for them in the shadows of Tier 2?